Okay, so tell me what you're up to.
Yeah. So we are here to talk about a campaign that the Ion Center and NKU's Nurse Violence Prevention Center has been collaborating on for a while, called Love Letters to Survivors. I think it's really cool. I think a lot of the time when people think about survivors, we think about the story of what happened to them, right? We're talking about like the worst moment of their life, and we're referring to that a lot of the time as like their story. We hear that a lot, right? Like a survivor is telling their story. And we created this campaign to talk about how that's not their story, right? When we narrow survivors down to just what happened to them, we're forgetting the person. And in our line of work, to be successful at prevention, to be successful at advocacy, we have to see the whole person. And so we wanted to create this campaign to show that. So we put out a call to on our social media accounts and just said, we're doing this campaign to honor the full person. And if anyone wants to submit, we ask questions like, what makes you happy? What are you most proud of? What's your style? We ask questions about like, what's your biggest guilty pleasure? Just like kind of random things. We ask no questions about what made them a survivor. We don't ask their names. We didn't ask for any identifiable information, just that. And then we created these graphics that represent all the amazing things that go into their whole story. So that's the campaign.
Wow.
We work a lot in statistics, right? Like we live in that place because it's helpful to know like this many people in our community are experiencing violence, right? And we like will list out statistics, but what we're doing then is we're kind of losing the person. And so I think this is just a way to bring that back in, right? It's not 1 in 5. It's Sammi, right? It's not like this like metaphorical fake person. Like, no, this is an actual person who has a full story and a full life other than this moment. And we really wanted to celebrate that.
Yeah, because you're talking about celebrating that narrative instead of just a statistic on that. What is the feedback you've had so far from the survivors going through that process?
About through this campaign.
Just asking those questions or thinking about, because those were kind of neat questions you mentioned. Like I was thinking when you said that, I was like, how would I explain my own style? Like that, kind of stumped me. It's kind of like when my daughter was really little and she'd ask me what my favorite color was. And it's like, I had to think, you're like, I guess you have your preferences every day, but you just don't kind of stop and think about it. So what's any feedback from the people who filled this out?
I mean, we've not gotten feedback from people. I will share. I'm a survivor. I filled this out because I thought it would be really cool to see. And Emily created mine, which was really cool too, to see like her perspective as my friend of like, this is who Sammi is to me, which is awesome. And I think for me, there were like, I wrote these questions. And then I went to go fill out the questions and I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't, like, who am I? But no, it was really cool to see the different, like the wide range of responses we got. As we like created this, one of the processes that we talked about was like, we want to see that whole person, right? And we don't want it to be like entry number 1. Or survivor number 1, right? So we like sat down and we like named them and like created like inspo boards of this is who we think they are. This is who like we think this person is a Swiftie. And sometimes they told us that. And like we got to see this and it was so easy to do because the submissions were like so full of life, It was cool to see like one person talked about their guilty pleasure was like having too many candies before bed, right? And
relatable,
like,
relatable.
So I think it was just really cool to see because like the style question, I didn't know how to answer that. But to see like we had somebody who talked about they love like neo-futurism. And we had people who were like, I love really simple things or I love like, we're eclectic things and just like seeing how different we all are, right? Because power-based personal violence doesn't just touch one community, right? And I think that this campaign really shows like it touches the lives of all of us and to like see that kind of combined. So it was cool to see.
How long will you all do this for?
Until the end of this month. So we started them in February as like Valentine's Day. We're doing love letters. It just felt right. And then we didn't put like an end cap on it. Like we want it to be done. We just waited to see how many submissions we would get. And then we've done one a week, except for 1 week that Emily and I both forgot to post. So it'll go 1 week longer than we thought it would. But it's on both of our social media pages. So it's the Ion Center and NKU and VPC.
Okay. And so, and I guess to get into numbers, let's talk statistics. How many of you all received?
Gosh, I want to say 8.
Okay.
I think 8, which I thought was amazing. And that gave us room to like really sit down and think about each one, and how we were going to like do them. Like, I feel like we all kind of fell in love with like these different like submissions and these people. And we got to like really do that because of the number that we had. I thought was great.
Do you all think this will be an annual thing, or you'll try in other parts, or?
I would love for it to be. I feel like this was so fun to do. Like, genuinely, I had a blast doing it. So I think we would love for it to be. And just, I think giving any outlet we can give for survivors to have their voice told is, I think, something we want to do. I think a lot of times we want to be able to share the stories of survivors, but we also want to respect their privacy, and we never want to use someone's story as like a marketing campaign. Like, that is never our goal, right? So I think this campaign is cool because it's protecting their confidentiality and while also like sharing who people are.
What was the hardest question to come up with?
I mean, there was a question on there that I didn't answer because I couldn't think about it. But I think it's like, just if someone met you, right, and this is all they saw, like, what would you want them to know about you? And I thought that was cool. I thought we got some really cool answers that like just like let us know who these people are. Something I've talked a lot about, and just like a submission that really stuck with me. One person answered that. So like, what do you want people to know? And they said something around like, they've been through really hard times, but, and this is a quote because I'm obsessed with it, is, but every bit of me loves, which I just thought is so beautiful, and said, so if I love you, know that every bit of me loves you. And I think that is just like, I mean, I'm just like so taken by it. We read it like 2 months ago and I can't stop thinking about it. I bring it up all the time, of somebody who's been through something so awful, right? And still has that much love in them, of like, even when you're annoyed with someone, like, every bit of me loves. I think that's so beautiful. And I think it was a lot of bravery on those survivors' parts too, to share that, because that's a big question. That is like not like, and tell me a fun fact, right? Like, right. What bad TV show do you watch? That's like, yeah, who are you as a person? What do you want people to know about you? And I think that was just so beautiful.
Another student said, resilience made me, but love saved me. And I was like, oh, put it on a poster. I want it in my office for everybody to see. But it was powerful. Yeah. Because the questions, to be honest, were quite silly, in a few, which is how we
wanted it to be.
Exactly. But it's just the intentionality. I was like, ooh, that's good.
Well, and when you can get people to relax is when the personality comes out.
Right.
Right. You know, when you're kind of on formal, you know, you write a different way. And especially like if you're dealing with people who are going through college, so you're used to a certain writing or writing style, or, you know, something like that. So now you get them laughing and you get people at, you know, kind of dig in, and then you kind of start thinking about, because like when you saying that out loud, I'm thinking, oh, probably a lot of the TV shows I watch are considered bad TV shows.
Right, same.
There's probably a lot, like, a lot I do that, you know, it's not hardly high-minded.
Yeah,
you know?
I had to edit when Emily made mine, where I was like, just like writing down words, you know, and I was talking about how I like really bad books, you know, and sorry to say that in a library. All book is a good book. I love books. But I think I wrote down something like, I love smutty little books. And she put that in the caption. I was like, silly little books. But where we were just like, I mean, I think all of the submissions, they were just like honest. And I think like when you're doing something like this, you expect it, kind of like we were talking about before we started recording, like people think that this work is really sad, right? And there are moments, but I think a lot of it is really joyful. And I think the people I work with are the best people I know. I know that. When I worked at NKU in the Violence Prevention Center, I was like really proud of that team, because Emily and Kendra and Maddie, who works there now, they're like, they have the best hearts of anyone, and they care so deeply for their students. And that is so true at the Ion Center too, right? Like, all of the people there care so deeply and love so deeply. So it's just like cool to be able to show up really authentically in this space, and like, yeah, I get to talk about the smutty books I read, and that's okay.
I think in the nonprofit world too, you get so deep into like what you're doing or trying to make it work or trying to stay funded and supporting people through the hardest times, you forget to be creative or you forget to be intentional.
Right.
And I feel like these outlets where we get to be creative and intentional to try to reach our office is life-giving. It is so much fun.
I guess any other like lessons or takeaways then from either from this or any other thing that you all have that you've been working on or going to have coming up?
I think one of the things that I think is so powerful about this campaign is giving voices back to survivors. I think one of the things I want people to know and to carry with them is that when somebody goes through a moment of harm, right, when somebody experienced power-based personal violence, they're having power taken away from them, right? So the way that we respond to that, the way that we acknowledge the harm that they've been through, the way that like we celebrate their courage and their bravery, needs to always be about giving that power back, right? And I think there are really creative ways to do that, and I think this is an example of that. Of we're not taking their story and sharing it; we're asking them to share their story with us so we can share it out, you know. And I think that's so important, and I think in our work that's something we really strive to do.
I would say think critically about what you're consuming about survivors and the media. And when we do prevention education, we always ask students to connect. Like, what is your connection to this work? Because obviously we're passionate about it, but what makes you passionate about what we're coming in and talking to you about? So we ask them to think about your friend or your sister or your coworker, somebody that you know as a survivor, and just kind of holding them and their story and honoring their story when you read through media, and it can kind of become victim blaming or, you know, just the narratives that we wouldn't want to be out there about survivors. And simply by believing survivors and making that known, I think carries so much power to kind of change the narrative.
And I think if you're sitting listening and you're like, well, I don't know a survivor first, yes, you do. Like, unfortunately, our communities it's not always safe to tell that story, right? And some people aren't ready, and maybe they'll never be ready, but you do know a survivor. I also think if you're looking around and you're saying, I really don't, yes, you do. You know me. You just got to know me. And I'm an aunt, and I'm a crafter, and I'm very messy.
You love bad books.
I love bad books. I love Canva. Like, you know a survivor, right?
You're ready to work at a library with that intersection of Canva and bad books. That is
right.
That is. We're all over that.
Honestly, that's my next career.
Yeah, that's we're all over that. You know, on that one. Yes. Real importantly, then, what is your styles? I don't need to know this before you.
My style.
Yeah, what's your style?
My style is like eclectic, colorful. I love a bow. I love little frogs.
I love a bow.
I love a bow. I love a bow. I will talk about little frogs as much as I can. One of my favorite, I'm a check-in question person. One of the things I always ask, if you were a silly little frog on a silly little lily pad, what would your silly little activity be?
Oh.
So I love a frog. So that's my style.
I mean, I got to think.
But all things like colorful, eclectic, that kind of thing.
I'd hop all day long, I think.
I know.
I mean, just be cool, right? Get ups like that. Like if I could dunk a basketball, that's all I would do. Yes.
Right.
I think, I haven't had to answer these questions. I think my style would be cozy.
Yeah.
Cozy and cute. My hair is like an extension of myself. Takes up the whole screen generally. So
I'm gonna start reading the Danish books on houga.
Yeah,
we just start.
Exactly.
So all about being cozy.
Yeah, Sean, you have to answer the question too.
Oh, my style. I was thinking. Okay, I thought about this. I was thinking back in the day, I owned a Jeep Cherokee. Wait a minute. I feel like I just had this conversation the other day. Yeah,
you had it with Stacy.
Stacy's in my head. Well, I had a Jeep Cherokee, and I remember I was like, I kind of equate myself to that, right? Because they're not very fast, but they're steady and they kind of last forever. And I would hope that would be my style of sticking around for a long time.
I love it.
You know, so I always thought about that because I was like, I really love that. Now I'm getting that nostalgia now that I haven't had one in like 15, 20 years. Now I don't remember all the things I hated about the car.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm like, and I have a daughter getting ready to get her license, and we were having this discussion. And I said, we should get you a Cherokee. And she's like, I'd like a car from this century, please.
That's rude.
And I was like,
but also kind of valid.
I was like, Yeah, you forget how, at least in my case, I forget how very old I am until I'm having a conversation with a 16-year-old.
Yeah, you should work with college students.
Oh, that's a long.
Yeah, that'll humble you for sure.
That's a long time. Because you'll just say things like, well, and you're like, how would they know this reference? But then having said that, you would say something where you think they would have no way of knowing that reference.
And then they're like, I know what you're talking about.
Oh, I've watched all of it on YouTube or something. And you're like, oh. So you kind of never, you're right. When you're working with like younger people, you're just never kind of like, do you know this? And then they're insulted.
Often.
Oh, in group, I was like, you all have seen Friends. Because I thought that was like a surefire.
Yeah.
And they all just stared blankly at me. And I was like, no? Okay, moving on. I'm so irrelevant.
Yeah.
You're like, this was such a big deal.
I was like, never mind. I take it back. Me either.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is.
What's Friends? Who's Ross and Rachel?
They were clearly on a break. Important stuff. Yeah, you're right. That is for sure it, because you're just like, and then you think about it, you're like, well, I don't know. It's hard. Things are so compressed now too with like YouTube and stuff where you can bring up stuff because you're like, why would you know that? You know, like then on top of that too. Yeah. So like there's a lot of our conversations at the house of, did you see this video or this clip? And you're like, listen, our memes are not the same. What I find hilarious, you don't find funny whatsoever. And so I was thinking that I was like, style would maybe be cringe dad depending on who you ask. I've been chastised at home like, you think you're funny, Dad.
I think that's just like an experience of being a father because I do that to my dad, which if I have to argue, it's valid. He does think he's funny and often no, and I'll send this to him. But I think that's just like a part of it.
What's that? It must be Seinfeld who said, all men think they're funny, all women think they're interior decorators.
Well, I actually am one. I've decided. So
I think I'm both.
We can both hit them occasionally, right? We're not always there.
Equality.
Yeah. All right. So anything else real quick before you guys go, and anything we can include?
No, I think that's it.
You all wonderful. Thank you so much.